Have you ever wondered why money feels like such a taboo subject? Or why so many of us hold these outdated beliefs that end up holding us back financially?
And why some of us are stuck following the financial rules of our parents, rules that might not even make sense.
In this episode, we're diving into the 5 generational money taboos that are keeping you from reaching your financial potential. We're going to break them down, challenge them, and show you how to flip the script for your money mindset.
So if you've ever asked yourself, is debt really that bad? Or do I really need to follow my parents' financial path? Stick with us because we've got some eye-opening stuff coming for you right now.
Trust me, by the end of this episode, you'll have a whole new perspective on how to approach money. And you might even start rethinking some of those quote unquote unwritten rules you've been living your life by.
So grab your notepad, sit back, let's get started.
So, Dominic, I find that a lot of people that I'm working with, for both younger individuals and some of my older clients for wealth management, I find that when I'm working with the younger people, a lot of us have fears around becoming our own parents. But we end up inheriting the beliefs around money that our parents had. So, although we fear becoming our parents, we often end up becoming our parents because we're just absorbing the beliefs they had and never questioning if those beliefs are correct for us in today's day and age.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I know every kid doesn't really want to become like their parents in 100%, but maybe there's hopefully some good aspects you take away from them. Hopefully they were at least decent role models growing up. But no, I totally understand that and I totally get that. Most people don't want to end up like their parents, financially speaking, because most of the country is not in a great financial spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately, when we keep on taking on what our parents taught us about money, we end up living the same generational cycle over and over and over again of people that can't figure it out. That's why we see these areas of people that are stuck in the same economic hardship over and over and over again, because maybe they're replaying the same exact money scripts that they took from their parents. And many of the times we're raised to believe that talking about money is taboo. And unfortunately, by avoiding these money conversations, we are continually to perpetuate the financial illiteracy that we see in the world today.
Indeed. No, absolutely. And perpetuate, that's a good one. That's a 5 letter, that's a five, that's a Scrabble. That's a mega word right there. I would not want to play you in Scrabble. That's for sure. Uh, no, but like you said, the conversation around money is a very taboo thing, a very sensitive thing that
Mhm.
families don't want to talk about. Most families don't even have a conversation. You know, oftentimes, I'm going to pose a question. I'm curious.
Mhm.
What do you think about this? Do you think parents have a conversation about the birds and the bees more or finance more?
Oof.
Because there's
I'm
not,
probably going to say they probably talk about the birds and the bees more often than they do
yeah,
about money.
that's what I'm thinking. Because if your 16-year-old goes into $2,000 worth of debt, that's a problem. But if she's gets pregnant at 16, that's a bigger problem. That's a more of a lifelong problem. A lifelong event. Sometimes it's a problem, sometimes it's not. Maybe that's your plan. I don't know. All depends on the lifestyle you want to live. But here on the Five Guys, that's not necessarily our life. So let's continue on. So we're talking a little bit about debt in our first topic, or what do we got? I'm excited to get
Yeah.
into it.
Before we get into that, what I first want to talk about is, by avoiding these money conversations that most families end up doing, it ends up leading to negative effects on our money attributes, our relationships, and our life goals. In fact, over 24% of millennials have less, or only 25% of millennials have a quote unquote basic financial literacy, according to the National Endowment of Financial Education report. And what that means is that 3/4 of millennials are unprepared for retirement or financial milestones. So I really think the solution here, before we get into everything, is
Mhm.
to have open, honest conversations about money that can lead to both learning, growth, and better financial preparedness. And speaking
Absolutely.
of learning, growth, and financial preparedness, if you're getting value from this episode thus far, please like and subscribe to continue to get more information like this in your feed every week.
Yeah, because the more you're surrounded by great financial knowledge, the more inclined you are to act on it. And we talk about it on the podcast all of the time. If you're just listening to this podcast, I love that, right? I love that. But I want more. I want more. I'm greedy like that. What do I want? I want more out of you. I want you to reach more. I want you to do more. I want you to become more. I want more for your life. And if you're just listening and not taking action, then this podcast is purely entertainment. Might as well go watch The Three Stooges or something like that, right? But if you're going to learn, that's half the battle. The other half is implementing. So we highly recommend hit the subscribe, hit the like, be a part of the community, be on this constant feed of, yo, this is a community where we're getting better, not just physically, not just mentally, but financially, right? We talk a little bit more about finance, but we also talk a lot about other things like philosophy and whatnot. We get off on tangents quite a bit. I won't deny that. And I won't deny our tangents either. So, with that being said, I'm off of my tangent. Let's get back to the podcast. Chris, back over to you.
All right. So let's go ahead and talk about taboo number one that I see while working with both boomers and with their kids and even millennials. And I think you're Gen Z, right? Or are you Gen Y?
I think I'm Gen Y. I don't,
Gen Y. So
probably.
I work with a large number of clients, so I get to see really the gamut. And the first taboo that I see that a lot of people have passed down to their kids, which maybe isn't always right, is that all debt is always bad, and that debt should be something that is avoided at all costs. We can think of people like Dave Ramsey, Susie Irwin, or Ehrman, people that say if you take on debt, that it's not that you're just making a bad choice; you are fundamentally a bad person for needing to take on debt.
That's
And
crazy.
I don't believe that that's true all of the time.
No, not at all. Not at all. That's absolutely absurd because, without debt, you wouldn't be in a house. Most of America wouldn't be in a house. Most of America can't cover a $700 surprise bill, let alone what's the national average? 400,000 for a house? Something like that?
Probably, yeah.
Probably, you know? So without debt, it would take a long time for me to save up for a house, long time for me to save up for a car, right? But by that time, you know, it's gonna be a very rough season. So debt is a tool, and I feel like a lot of financial advisors, they don't want to say debt is a tool, right? But debt is a tool. You can use it for good, you can use it for bad, you can abuse it, or you can use it properly. And a lot of the older generations who have lived through, Y2K, dot-com bubble, 2008, more, even more recessions, right? War, they know that stuff like that fluctuates the market. And, if you have a variable interest rate or if you have a high interest rate on your debts, that's not a good thing. So I can understand their skepticism, right? I guess a skeptic parent is a good parent in some regard, but why isn't all debt bad, Chris?
Well, some debt is an investment in your future. You threw out there a mortgage. Most people can't afford a mortgage straight up. In fact, I would say that people that could afford a mortgage straight up probably aren't listening to this podcast because they have their stuff very, very fine tuned, or they're just very, very high earners. But there's also things like student loans. And while, we've talked about the student loan crisis many times on this podcast before, and, there's definitely issues on both sides of the debate. But in general, when you go and you take out a student loan, you're making an investment in your future. Without that loan, you wouldn't be able to get that education. And that education, ideally, and I say ideally because sometimes it doesn't, but it is ideally supposed to lead you to a better job, the ability to find better work that brings in more money and actually pays for itself. That's what quote unquote smart debt is versus bad debt. Smart debt is where you take on a loan or something like that. You take on debt to yourself in order to purchase something that you think is going to give you a positive ROI, return on investment, in the future. But so many of us were taught to fear all debt and that all debt is bad. And I agree that most debt is bad, but it really is a tool and it depends on how you use it. If you want to use a hammer to build a house, that's great. That's how you're supposed to use that tool. But if you want to use it to bludgeon somebody, that's not the way that tool was invented. And it's the same way with debt. So I think it's really important that we talk to our audience. We make sure that they realize that financial education around debt, around credit scores, around interest rates, around loan terms is what is needed. And by telling kids or younger people to avoid debt at all costs, it automatically closes the door on what is a credit score, what are interest rates, what are loan terms. But in actuality, they are going to need these things in life. They're going to need to know these tools. But if you tell them all debt is bad, then they negate all of those tools. And eventually, when life throws them a curveball, or when life just happens and they have to get their first credit card, or take out a loan for school, or even take out a loan for a medical bill, now
Mhm.
they don't know any of it because they were taught that all debt is bad. And I'll even throw out a pro tip there. If you learn how to use debt effectively, you can even use it with your credit cards if you're paying your bill in full every month, and leverage that for rewards. And you can actually use it for your advantage. But first, you need to understand that not all debt is bad. It depends on how you use it.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. The more knowledge you have, the more sound a decision you can make. Imagine being on a road, right? One goes east, one goes west. Total opposite directions. I'm trying to get to Disneyland, but I have no idea which way. It's the same thing with debt. It's the same thing with not knowing. You have to educate yourself, because if you don't educate yourself, then you're not going to be able to make sound decisions. Now, I'm not saying that you should go out, get a degree in finance, and dive deep into the rabbit hole. Like, no, I'm not saying that. But one should have at least a general knowledge of how things work on a first principle scale, right? And that's basically what we're doing today. We're talking a little bit about that, and we're breaking down different parts of that, right?
So I see so many people have it in their schemas, in their brain, in their money mindset, of this mantra, and that mantra is what they learned from their parents: all debt is bad. So I want to give people new mantras to tell themselves when they have that script, or that story play in their head of all debt is bad. So maybe the new mantra you could add to your life is: not all debt is bad. I just need to understand and manage it wisely.
Absolutely. Yeah, because from what we know from our vast Star Wars knowledge is all Siths, only Siths deal in absolutes, right? So to call all debt bad, I mean, that's just evil. It's purely evil. And rest in peace to Darth Vader. That being said, um, I think to deal anything in absolutes is in most cases foolish, right? Only being plant based, only being vegan. I only do the treadmill. I only do this. It's like, guys, there's more than one way to skin a chicken, right? And with debt, it's the same. It's a very similar. It's very similar. I don't want to harp on this too much because I feel like I'm on repeat now. I'm on repeat. But now that your brain is kind of opened up, now that you've opened up to the possibility that not all debt is bad debt, what can we learn from that? And not just in money, but what can we learn from having these transformations of, I want to call them almost programs, right? Your parents programmed them into you, and now you have to unlearn that program. So since we've unlearned and now we know that not all debt is bad debt, where can we go from here? I'm not saying to the credit card, to the bank, let's pull out 10 credit cards. No. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm recommending. Unless you're a credit card hacking genius like Chris. Unless you're Chris, don't go out and get more credit cards.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. So would you like to move on to money taboo number 2 that I see often?
Oh, I'm I'm
So
I'm worried about it. I'm worried about it because number one was pretty. That makes me nervous. If that's the first taboo, and people are living their lives without debt, not just not in debt. It's one thing to be not in debt. I like that. But to never use debt is a different conversation. So I'm
yeah.
worried. If that's number one, what's number two? What's number two, Chris? Lay it on me.
So number 2, and this is what I often see happening with my older clients, not with people in your generation or millennials, but it's never okay to cut off your kids. That's what I see in money myth number 2. So I think the myth that I've seen is that parents should never stop financially supporting their children. And some parents that I've seen even continue to give to their kids like an allowance or a stipend or whatever well into their adulthood, well beyond the time as to when you're supposed to support your kid. I agree. Between the ages of 0 and 18, like that's yours. You need to support your kid. That doesn't mean you need to buy them every single damn thing in the world, but you do need to at least provide them with a roof over their head, provide them with food, provide them with the basic necessities. But after that time, every parent's different, and I understand that, but you do not need to continue to support your kids. And too often as am I seeing kids nowadays who don't know how to interact with money by the time they get to college, which no one really has. But a lot of it is because rather than having to take responsibility for anything, everything has been handed to them. And I think financial independence needs to be the key lesson that we're trying to teach our kids, that you don't need to be a millionaire, but you also don't need to be poor. We need to find somewhere in the middle, somewhere that you can be happy with what you have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And knowing your number that's such a deep, that's a whole conversation. We could have a whole podcast on knowing your number and how much is too much. 50 million, can you be happy with 50 million or can you be happy with 50,000? Knowing your number is so important. Yeah, I have not come in contact with the cutting your kids off. My kids, they haven't arrived yet. They're still on delivery. Hopefully the delivery, let's postpone it for a little bit. I'm not trying to have them on the way just yet, but no, I mean, you think you would cut your kids off at 18, Chris, or how do you think you would run it?
I would probably say not at 18. I mean, it depends, man. Like it depends on so many different factors. I couldn't pontificate as to what would happen there, but I think by over supporting adult children, especially, you really hinder their confidence and their growth,
Yeah.
because people need to have a drive to go out there into the wilderness to figure things out. And without that drive, I just see so many people who will never do it. Why would you want to leave your mom's basement if your mom isn't pushing you? There are very few people that would go out there and do that, especially if everything is supported for them. So I think currently the mantra is you never let go or never stop supporting your kid. But I think a new mantra needs to be, we need to start encouraging financial independence, and that strengthens their self-reliance and their growth. I think about this a lot from other perspectives too, not just cutting off your kids, but putting your kids before yourself financially. Too often do I speak with younger parents, and we'll be talking about their financial plan. What's your financial game plan? We're trying to set everything up for their retirement, for them buying a new house, for them buying a new car. And they're like, I don't care about any of that. I just want to set up a thing for my kid. And I always have to bring it back to them and say, I understand that you care for your kid, and I love that. But if you don't start planning for yourself, at some point, your plan for your retirement is your kid, and that is not fair to them. Your kid can always go out and maybe take out debt for college or take out some sort of a debt or do whatever, but you can't sacrifice yourself in order to fix them. You have to put on your own oxygen mask before you can put on your child's.
Yeah, that's a tough one for parents to hear, I would assume, because they're, for some parents, I know for my parents, I happen to be their whole world. I'm the sun in their solar system, and in their life as well. That's unintended pun, but that's what I got here. I think you're spot on, though. I think you're absolutely spot on. The younger you can inspire your children to become self-sufficient and independent and more adults, right? The better. I'm not saying a 12-year-old should become an adult, not at all. But if you're 26, 27, 28, and you're just barely getting weaned off, right? You're just barely getting cut off. That's going to be a lot harder for that person, right? You want them to kind of flow with the culture a little bit, right? 18 to 22, that you're kind of weaning them off. They're going to college, they're doing trade school, they got a job or something. They're getting a taste of adulthood with a little bit of supplemental help, right? And once they move out, they get their own place. There you go. Off to the races. They're doing their own thing. I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah, I think a lot of parents, it's such a hard balance, right? Because so many parents, they think in order for me to show my child that I love them, I must always financially support them. And I think that's the difference between compassion and love, or always, yeah, I would say like true, like too much compassion versus love. Too much compassion would be, I'm always going to give my kid money no matter what. I'm always going to support them. But what if your kid has a drug addiction? What if your kid has something like that? You are still compassionate to that. And you're still giving them money that is harming them, and you're harming them in the long run. Where love would be, I want what's best for you. So I'm going to have to cut you off at this point. And of course, I'm taking it to an extreme of what if there's a drug addiction, but oftentimes it's not that extreme. It's just your kid is still living with you, but they need to get out into the real world. But you're telling yourself, but I need to love them. And in order for me to love them, I must always support them no matter what. And that's not real love. You don't always support somebody no matter what. It's like a child, right? Just because your child is throwing a tantrum, that doesn't mean that you need to support that tantrum because they're throwing it. You need to explain to them what's going on, why they might be feeling these big emotions. Let that pass, And then you need to also explain to them, because you love them, that you can't act like this in the real world. Because we've seen what happens when someone who's 2 years old continues that for their whole life. They become a tyrant when they're an adult. And if you try doing that shit, you try throwing your hands around, you try being a narcissist in real life, you get smacked down. And I think that's why so many people end up getting bullied in high school, because they've gone ahead and they've thought that the way that they were taught as kids to pound their feet and scream and not want to work with other people is how the world really works. But when they get into the real world, when they get into the real physics of progress, and they start to see that, oh shit, the world doesn't work the way that it does. I just can't throw a temper tantrum and everyone drops everything to placate to me. And it's the same thing financially. You can't just call foul and say, oh, I want a raise because mom and dad told me I deserve a raise. You need to actually put in that hard work. And it comes to the parents to instill that hard work in you. And I think that too many people aren't getting that instilled in them because their parents are willing to support them indefinitely. When I don't think that is true love. True love is teaching them to catch a fish rather than continually catching fish for them.
Perfectly said. Perfectly said. I have nothing to add to that. I agree with all of it. Agree with all of it.
So let's move on to taboo, money taboo number 3. And this is what I've seen more in my older clients. Clients who are worried about leaving a legacy, clients who are worried about estate planning, clients who are concerned about, when I die, what does that mean? And the taboo that I see is that you must always leave your kids an inheritance, even at your own expense. So the myth that I'm seeing is that people who are retired are sacrificing their financial well-being to leave an inheritance to their kids because they think that's the right thing to do every time.
Yeah, oftentimes society is wrong in that regard. Sometimes it's not correct to follow the crowd. I know for parents, you want to leave a legacy, right? You want to inherit them with something. And I get that. I totally get that. But the real inheritance is when you're alive and they're alive, and you pass down your knowledge, your ethics, your habits, your who you are as a person. Money is just money. It's just money. I don't want to praise it. I'm not going to praise it. Ironically, we have a podcast about money. But if you're trying to leave an impact in your children's lives, I can promise you the biggest impact isn't going to be money.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you brought it up earlier, the social pressure. And that's what I see. It's a lot of social pressure. And I think the social pressure has been put only towards the financial legacy. But like you mentioned, their legacy is so much more than just finances. Yes, when you leave this world, you want to leave a legacy behind. But why does that mean a number in a bank account or a number in an investment account to your kids? I think what kids really want is your words, and they want your time. By words, I mean they want you to talk to them. They want you to engage them as a real person. And they want your time, because that's what you're really going to be remembered for. You're going to be remembered for the impact that you left on their lives, not the impact you left on their bank account. Because that bank account, that's ephemeral. That's going to go away. But the legacy that you leave inside them, that's a thing that they're going to go out into the world and continue to spread what you've taught them over time. And I think in reality, where most parents may fear that if they don't leave an inheritance to their kid, it means they didn't love their kid. In reality, I think about this for yourself with your own parents. If your parents did right by you and they raised you correctly, most children just want their parents to be comfortable over receiving an inheritance. I could give two shits about receiving money from my parents after they die. The only thing that I care about is that they live the best life that they can, because that means so much more to me than I hope they don't retire early, because I want them to have a bigger nest egg for when they pass away in the future. If you raise your kid and that's what your kid is thinking about, then I'm just going to say, like, you fucked up as a parent. And we need to go back to the drawing board, because money is never going to fix that issue. In fact, it's probably going to make it substantially worse.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think that sacrificing your own retirement savings and leading yourself into financial struggles just to leave an inheritance, just to leave money to your kids, is a folly that is not worth anything. You must always prioritize yourself. And if you raise your kids right, that's what your kids really, really want. Not for you to leave them a bunch of money, for you to live the best life that you can, and for you to model that to them so that they know what to do when they're older and how to do that for their kids. So be the model that you want in the world. Be the model that you wish you had. It's okay not to leave an inheritance if it comes at your own expense. because I think the worst thing you could do is teach a kid teach your kid that's what true love is. And now your kid does that to themselves when they're older. And now that generational sin is repeating over and over and over again, where people aren't living the best life because they want to leave inheritance to their kids. And then that kid who was just waiting for that inheritance, they're going to blow it anyways. And now they're going to make the next generation worse off.
100%. 100%. I think a lot of times in our society, we glorify money way too much. And let's just put it there. Let me just break it down a little bit, right? If I'm a parent, obviously I want to instill in them the best values that I can, best habits, all the good stuff. We talked about this, right? One thing I'm not too concerned with is how many numbers or commas are on a screen. The one thing that I find to be so sad in the baby boomer generation, right? They hold most of the wealth, nothing wrong with that, but they don't want to spend it. And I'm not saying, you should have Gucci clothes, or that's not what I'm saying, right? But if you have the money and you have the time, you should use your money and spend the time. I think one of the saddest things in the world is to be rich, not rich, but well off and retired. And I've always wanted to go to the Bahamas on a little 7-day cruise, right? It's too expensive. It's like, but you have the money, you have the time. Before, when you wanted to do it, you didn't have the time or the money. And it's just like, it hurts me that people put so much value on money. I get it. I get that you can't buy a loaf of bread with love. I get that. Right? I've tried. They declined me, actually.
I'll give you the best hug in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Even the best hug in the world, you're not getting a loaf. You're not getting a loaf. But there's more important things than money. That's what I'm getting out of this taboo number 3. There's more important things with money than money. And I would say, and I think, Chris, you would back me up on this, memories are more important than money.
Yeah, I would 100% back you up on that. I mean, so many people think that at the end of the day, when I die, whoever has the biggest bank account, like, they get the best spot in heaven.
Yeah.
And that's just not the way it works. It's so difficult, but I always want to tell our audience, don't just focus on the tangible goods at the expense of the intangible. And what I mean by that is, so many people focus on, if I have more money than you, then I am that much better than you as a person, because it's quantifiable. If we're just going based off net worth, then that means that, Dominic, no offense to you, that I'm a better person than you because I have a higher net worth. And my retired client or my retired neighbor over there who has more money than me, they're a better person than I am. But that really doesn't mean anything. That's quantifiable, but that means nothing. But what's unquantifiable is the relationship you have with your kids, the relationship you have with your community, the memories that you have in your mind. And rather than focusing on showing to the world that you have more money than them in order to prove to other people that you're happy, why not be happy with yourself? And I think so many people think that retirement and joy and all these things come in a specific number. But if you ask anyone, how much money do you need to retire, they're always going to say double of whatever I currently have, because it isn't a number. It's a feeling. It's something that you need to know. So rather than knowing what is my end goal in terms of money, you need to ask yourself, what is my end goal in terms of what I want to do? What is my end goal in terms of what I really want from my life? And now I need to reverse back and find out, how much money do I need that to be? Because I think what a lot of people will find, both young and old, is that you need substantially less than what you think you do. But so many people are only focused on making more money without realizing that they don't need that money to live the life that they truly want. So rather than the mantra being, I must always leave my kid an inheritance in order to be a good parent, to show them that I love, I want the new mantra to be, you need to prioritize your own well-being first, and my children will understand. I'm going to prioritize my own well-being first, and my children will understand.
Absolutely. And if they don't understand, then you didn't do a good job raising them, to be honest. Yeah, because let's paint a scenario where you start dipping in, you start burning the cash as an old person, enjoying life as you should, and they're like, "Whoa, slow down, sport. Leave some for the rest of us." That's a problem. It's a very big problem. I'd honestly burn through it faster, genuinely.
I've seen it before, and I'm not going to say the client's name so I can say it, but I've seen it before where, there was going to be a good inheritance left to the kids. And at the time that the person was dying, they started racking up medical bill after medical bill after medical bill. And obviously that person was my client, the person that was passing away.
Yeah.
But the kids, they had also had access to me, and they're like, well, how much is all this going to cost if mom or dad keep on racking up all these bills? How much is going to lose me? And it really destroyed, like, it broke my heart to know that, like, these kids weren't worried about their parents' comfort at the end of their life. They wanted them to pass sooner in order to stop racking up medical bills, because every medical bill that they put up was more money out of the pocket. And the saddest part for me was that this parent was so focused on estate planning and making sure that they left a good legacy. Like, we had their trust, like, dotted 10 ways to Tuesday, different things we were going to do to make sure that all this stuff happened. And it was the saddest thing to me, is the biggest realization of money means nothing. And leaving a good trust means nothing if they're not going to remember you for that. They're only going to remember you for the money. Because I don't know what this parent was, or this person was like as a parent. I know them as a client. They were great. They seemed really, really good, and they seemed like a very kind person. But that could have come on years after being a parent, because people change as they get older. So maybe I knew that person, but I didn't know who they were as a kid. But so many people, they think, if I just leave this really good trust, leave this, everything is dotted, T's are crossed, everything is good, then I'll be remembered as a good person, or be remembered to be great, when in fact that had nothing to do with it. You're going to be remembered for being good or not, for all of the hard work you put in your entire life. You can't just pull it out in the ninth inning with a really good trust and hope that the legal system is going to remember you as a good person. Have I ever told you the story of Alexander Nobel?
Tell me.
So I'm not sure if you, I'm sure you know of the Nobel Prize.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so Alexander Nobel was actually the creator of dynamite. And dynamite was used during war to kill hundreds of thousands of people during early wartime, before we came up with our better weapons.
Yeah.
But Alexander Nobel, so he was known as a war profiteer. He was known as a merchant of death. And he didn't want his name to be remembered as the merchant of death. So he started the Nobel Grant Foundation in order to give awards to people that advanced the human cause, and made the world a better place. So now Alexander Nobel is remembered for the Nobel Peace Prize, for doing things that are known for peace. His legacy is now tied to that rather than tied to the merchant of death. But so many people believe, I can do the same thing with my money. I can be remembered as a good person because I left my kids a bunch of money. But that's not how it works. And once you know the story of Alexander Nobel, it kind of takes away a little bit of that Peace Prize. It makes it like, oh, okay, he did that in order to rewrite the story. I'm not saying
Wow.
that either one of those things are wrong.
Yeah.
Yes, he did create dynamite, and yes, it was used for nefarious purposes, but it still was his legacy. Both things are his legacy. They are both true simultaneously. That he did very good, and also he did very bad. And that's just the human condition.
Interesting. Interesting. It's amazing how much of an impact you can have in death. For all of existence, people will know the Nobel Peace Prize, right? The Nobel Prize, and for science, for literature, for different things. I think that's so interesting. That's a very interesting story. I like that story.
Yeah, but I would still say that it's not what you leave in death, it's what you were in life.
Mm,
Like Alexander the Great. What's his
yeah,
last name?
no idea.
No one knows. The only people that are really remembered are usually those who were nefarious. It was the Adolf Hitlers, the Alexander the Greats, the Cleopatras, the people that we know because of the terrible things they did, the Stalins, the
Yep.
Maos. We remember those
Yep.
people. We don't often remember the good people.
Oh,
So,
that's true.
but you can live your life to be remembered indefinitely in your kids and your great grandkids. And this thing, by teaching your loved ones that I'm going to be there for you to support you, and I'm going to give you my words and my time. But that doesn't always mean I'm going to leave you money, and that's okay. So I'd like to move on to money taboo number 4. And this is what I see a lot in my younger clients who are getting married, and they got this from their parents. And the taboo is, couples should always combine finances.
Interesting.
And the myth is that married couples should always share joint bank accounts and all of their finances all the time, because previous generations often combined finances on everything, and it worked out well for them in their story they're telling their kids. So what do you think about that?
Keyword That's the story they're telling their kids. That's not exactly the facts, right? I mean, we know here in America that the reason for divorce in most cases is because of finances, right? We know in America the man does not like to be controlled by the woman, and we know that the woman does not like to be controlled by the man. We understand that. They don't want to be treated like kids. They want to be treated like adults. And oftentimes, if you combine finances and one person is outspending the other, it's going to feel like you're taking from my time. Like it cost me 40 hours to get that 2000 and you just spent 1500. You just spent 30 hours of my life on garbage, right? So I could see why people wouldn't want to combine finances. I can also see why people would want to combine finances. Me personally, I like the idea of gamifying it. All right, I was playing this thing on single player mode. I got X amount of bills, electric, water, power, essentials. Now with another person here, I can play it in two part. We'll combine our finances. It'll be easier to pay this, and we can get to our investing goals faster. I get that. I would say probably a little bit of maybe like a hybrid mode would be a little bit better. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really going to depend on the couple and their ability to communicate and what's best for them in their life. And it's going to be so dependent on so many factors that I could never really speak to what's going to be best. Because for some people, it is going to be full on combine the finances and we're just going to look at us as one person financially.
Yeah.
And that's going to work. And there's going to be other people where the couple is going to say, no, we don't combine at all. For me, when I advise clients, I often say that you want to combine at least a little bit because you guys aren't two separate islands in the same house. You guys need to be connected in some way, shape, or form. So for what I always say, for many modern couples, I think a hybrid approach, if not a fully combined, is the way to go, where you have maybe shared and individual accounts. You have a shared account where you know, hey, rent's coming out of here, or the mortgage, utilities, all that stuff. But then you also have your own individual accounts. And if you want to go and spend money on a haircut or money on shoes or money on a bag or money on new parts for your car, you don't have to ask the other partner for permission on that. Because just like you said there, that's what typically leads to so much of the fighting. What I've seen before too is people will they'll keep their separate finances, and unfortunately, what ends up happening when they do that is they're constantly going tit for tat. Hey, I paid for lunch last time. Do you have to pay for dinner? Oh, but
Mm-hmm.
dinner costs more money than lunch, so I'll have to get two of those for every one. And then it gets even worse when kids get involved because what I've noticed when I'm working with married parents is that often it's the wife who ends up having to pay for all of the kids' expenses while the husband pays for the mortgage and stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
it just never really makes sense to me to do it that way because the mortgage and the kids are a combined thing. Just because the mom birthed the child, like the dad still had a huge part in that. That wasn't going to happen without the dad doing there. In fact, 1 in 5 couples identify money as the greatest relationship challenge they have, according to a fidelity study. And I would say only 1 in 5, 20%. I would say it's substantially higher than that. I just think the way they did the survey, that most people were like saying, like, no, 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 our money stuff is good. But from talking with clients that I've worked with, money is often the greatest relationship challenge, one of the greatest relationship challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And the people that are coming to you are the ones that are taking action, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and
that's
what
true.
percentage are taking action, right? So that's a low number. So yeah, it's definitely way higher than 20. If 20% of the couples in America are the ones arguing about money, that doesn't even make any sense. That math is not mathing. Half of the people that get married are divorced,
Yeah.
and
And a majority of them is because of money is an issue. Now only 20% of them saying, oh yeah, money's an issue for us.
yeah, exactly.
Um, but that's also saying the greatest relationship challenge is money.
True.
So, I mean, there's a bunch of issues that couples can have for sure.
Yeah, a hundred
Um,
percent.
but I think when it comes to this, it's communication is key. And like we said, money is often the leading cause of divorce. So my pro tip would be I just want you guys to communicate and choose a system that works best for the couple but also keeps their financial goals in sync. They need to have a vision as to where they're going together. And then they work backwards to get there. That's the reason that when I work with individuals, I only work with them typically for a year in my coaching program. But when I work with couples, it's a year and a half. Because with an
Mm.
individual, it's easier to figure out what's the goal. But with a couple, now we have to align the goals, which is substantially harder to do. Because if one person, their goal in life is to retire in Montana, and the other person's goal is to sail around the world. Those two goals are dialectically never going to work together. So we need to be able to figure out what can we do to bring those two together. And it amazes me the amount of couples that have never spoken about what is their vision of the future. And until they get to that point, now they're like, oh shit, like you want to go to Montana? Well, I'm going on the boat. And with me sitting there in the middle, like you guys have never talked about this. And you guys are both, the reason you guys are fighting so much about money is because you're both swimming in very different directions. And whatever you're doing, wife, is getting in way of his thing, husband, and vice versa. And you both think that you're both trying to harm one another, when in reality, you're both just trying to get to your own destinations. But you never communicate to say, this is where I want to go. But more importantly, you need to figure out, where do we want to go together if you want this relationship?
Yeah, it's almost like communication is an important part of a relationship, you know?
Who to thunk?
Dude, that's crazy. That we need to open the podcast with that one. That's wild. Yeah, no, 100%. And pro tip, guys, pro tip. Not just with your partner, but talk about your goals with your friends, with your parents. Where do you want to see yourself in 5 years? Hopefully they don't say in a grave. That would not be ideal. But if they do, start spending that money. Anyway, so that was number 4 of
Yep, and I want to
number.
give everyone a new mantra before we move on to number 5. So the
Please, yeah,
mantra
please.
has been, a married couple will always combine finances 100%. The new mantra I want people to give themselves is, I'll find what works best for my relationship, and I'll keep communication open with my. Maybe we can take it a step further in that we'll find what works best for our relationship, and we'll keep open communication. Because remember,
Absolutely.
there is no I in team. There's a me, but there is no I.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you're with your partner, it's both of you together. You're both creating a vision of your life together. And finances is a part of what's going to get to there, a very large part of what's going to get you there, but
Yeah.
not all of the parts. That's not all of it.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. I love that. I love that. Yeah, you got to find what works for you. Keep those communication lines open. I love it. I love it. Do we have a number 5, or am I getting greedy?
No, you're not getting greedy at all.
What do we
And
got?
this number 5 is something that I've seen most often with everyone that I work with. And they may not think that they're doing it, but they are. And it takes some uncovering to really think about it. So think about this for yourself, listener, as I say this. Number 5 is, in order to be financially successful, I must follow the same financial goals as my parents. Taboo number 5 is following the same financial goals as your parents had. Because the myth is that your financial path should mirror whatever your parents were, good or bad. Get married young, buy a house, have kids, the old checklist that we've always heard. But in reality, times have changed. Housing prices are different. Career goals are completely different. Lifestyles are completely different today than they ever were. The old adage of, I'm going to work until I die, get a pension and Social Security and a little bit of 401k and I'll be good to go, that's gone. Those days are gone. So why are you continuing to try to mirror the path your parents had, where that path is no longer available to you at all? And a lot of this I see is because of shame. It's shame on the younger generation, but I also want to shame the older generation for talking so much smack on the younger generation by calling them lazy for not buying a house, for calling them lazy for having to work at 2 jobs. Yes, I understand that a long time ago, people had to work 2 jobs to get themselves through things, but that was the exception to the rule. Nowadays, people are working 2 jobs just to survive, just to freaking get an apartment and pay rent. Where back in the day, people were working 2 jobs just because they were trying to buy their second house, not to just make it. Times have changed, and I don't think that everyone has realized that. So the longer that you keep on trying to perpetuate the idea that I just need to make it like my parents did or like my grandparents did, without also realizing that the world is updated to a new place, you're trying to play a program in a system that just doesn't work. It would be like me going and trying to take the newest Mac operating system and trying to load it onto the first generation of an iPad. is just not going to work. And I could sit there and complain all day that the iPad's broken, or I can say that, oh, times have changed, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to update my operating system.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, like Chris said, it's a different world. It's a different world. And I think that's one of the problems that people in my generation have when getting advice from their parents. It's like, well, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like. And I almost don't like hearing that because it almost feels like you're playing the victim a little bit. We've talked a lot about that over past podcasts of you don't want to be the victim. You want to be the hero to your own story, right? But at the same time, there's a lot of truth behind it as well. Well, you don't know what it's like. Well, yeah, you didn't have where the house was in your generation might have been 1 year's salary, 2 years' salary, right? In my generation, 4, 5, 6, 7 times salary sometimes. And that can be so frustrating hearing advice that doesn't apply because you lose faith in the source. And I always feel like for parents, they shouldn't give, I don't know, I don't want to make blanket statements because blanket statements, there's always going to be, you know, certain situations. But in my experience, when I'm asking questions about finance, if they're specific, I'll go online, right? But if there's something that I want to see, how did you do it back in your day? In your chapter, how about this, better than that? In your game, because I have a different game in 2024. In your game in 1980s, what was the game like? In compared to my situation, like what would you do? Right? And see how I can balance that off with what I can do now. They didn't have the internet back then. They didn't have ChatGPT. They couldn't sell homes across the country, right? Off a phone, off the internet, right? They couldn't do what we're doing right now. So we have a lot of advantages and a lot of disadvantages, but I absolutely agree with taboo number 5 of following the same goals as your parents. I feel like there are certain rules that you can follow, but not all of them.
Yeah. And I think that's okay to remember that your path is going to be unique to you. And too many people that are focused on living their own parents' path are going to be perpetually disappointed because the world is just a different place. Especially what I see is like when it comes to housing. Like I just always want to tell people, especially like in our generation, that it is okay to rent and it is okay to delay quote unquote huge milestones that your parents had. Remember, like my parents were married at like 20 and then had me by like 25. I'm 32 and I don't have kids yet. Like that's
Yeah.
crazy to me that
Yeah.
like people were doing that. Like they were children. I think of myself at 25 years old, like I was a moron. That's terrifying to think that like that they had kids and my parents waited longer than what average people did.
That's
Most people have them at like
crazy.
20 or 21 or 22. You legally couldn't drink, but you could have a kid. Like insane. But when it comes to the house thing, it's okay to rent. And in many instances, it's actually a better financial decision for people than buying. But so many people think I have to buy because it's part of this old mantra in my head. It's part of the money script. It's part of my money meme that in order to be successful in life, I must own property. And we just need to make sure that we're discussing that your own goals need to align with your current values, and the current values of the world is what's most important. Making sure that your goals are aligned with you and the situation you find yourself in. If you're someone who says, like, I don't really want a house, I like being able to move from city to city, I like being able to rent, I like living in my van, I like being in an apartment downtown, don't let anyone else shit on you and say, like, no, you have to buy a house because that's the only way to be successful. There are so many ways to be successful. Just because that worked for your parents, that is wonderful for them.
Mm-hmm.
But that does not mean it has to be the only way that works for you. We have so much more information at our fingertips.
Absolutely. The key is don't play the victim. Yeah, houses are expensive and incomes are lower. Okay. What is crying about it going to get you? It's not going to get you much, right? Be the hero of your own story. Increase your income. Find a way to make it work. We did a whole podcast on purchasing homes. We did a whole podcast on increasing your income. We've done whole podcasts on mindset shifts, right? Other people are doing it, so why can't you do it?
And I always say when I work with my clients who would tell me, and I agree, because there are times where I go, woe is me, oh, this
Mhm.
is so difficult. These are all so hard. Median rents are increasing dramatically while median income is staying exactly the same. Car insurance is substantially more. What cost of electricity costs all this much. Yes, all of these things are true. But the next question you have to ask yourself, and now what? And
Yeah,
now what am I going to do with that information? Am I going to sit here and complain and lament the world? Or am I going to go out there and try to change it to work for me? And that's what I think true power is. True power is to close your eyes, imagine a world that is different than this one, and then to open it and acquire the skills and the fortitude to go out and make that world a reality. And too many people are busy playing the victim and trying to get other people to come to their side and say, oh, poor you, rather than putting that energy of playing victim into changing the world for the better, not only for yourself, but for all other people. So rather than the mantra being, in order to be financially successful, I must have the same financial goals as my parents, I want your new goal to be, my financial path is unique. And I need to create my own goals on my timeline.
100%. 100%. I mean, you are your own person, right? You're not your parents. You're not even your twin brother or twin sister. You're your own person. So act like it. Make your own rules, make your own goals, and set out on this beautiful journey we call life.
And if you're getting value from this far, please make sure that you like and leave a comment. Let us know which one of the taboos really have resonated with you thus far. And I do have an extra one that I want to really make sure is the most poignant, because I think it's the most important one. And that's the taboo of we don't talk about money. I think too many people have this, and financial illiteracy continues because of this taboo that we don't talk about money. And studies show that many adults experience anxiety and stress when discussing finances. More people are confident in talking about their sex life than they're talking about their money and their finances, which is crazy. I like talking about both of them. I think they're the most fun subjects to talk to anybody about, but I'm also crazy.
You're
But I think
crazy.
that's insane that you would be willing to go out and talk about your therapy sessions, talk about your issues with your spouse, but you're unwilling to talk about how much money you made last year or how
Yeah,
much money you're spending, or you're so afraid to even look at those things. And until we're willing to start talking about these things, that everyone start talking about money, we can never really normalize it. We can never move past these taboos or even realize that they are taboos or scripts that we have in our brain until we have the ability and the desire to actually talk about it. So my pro tip is share your money experiences with people, even your children. Share those things with your kids and encourage financial literacy from an early age. Obviously, you have a kid, you're not going to tell them like, hey, we might lose the house next month, but you can always tell them like, hey, we need to cut back in these areas and explain to them the reason why. Don't scare them, don't fear monger, but also explain to your kid what's going on and explain to your friends what's going on. Explain everything. So many people try to keep it locked up because of shame. And that shame just keeps on growing and growing and growing, but it leads you to making worse and worse financial decisions.
100%. 100%. You can't communicate if there is no conversation. So yeah, I highly recommend to have that conversation. Highly recommend to not share your sex life. Uh,
I don't know.
um,
Share your sex life if you want to, but
no, don't share it with me. I don't
I,
want to know. I don't want to know. I don't even want to look at you that way.
I've just noticed that, like with my own family, like speaking from experience, that when I became a financial advisor, and then more importantly, when we started the podcast,
Yeah.
it just having these financial conversations every week, it gave people permission to come and ask me the questions that they always wanted to ask to somebody else, but were afraid to. And from what I've been able to see, it just helped us in our family planning, not only just for me and my wife, but also like my larger family of like my parents and my aunts and uncles, and what we envision for our future as well, as a family, which has been really, really cool and very eye opening, especially coming from an immigrant family where we didn't talk about money. Like money was a taboo subject. So being able to see that, like, oh, everyone else wants to talk about this too, just everyone else is scared. So if you're that person that starts it, you'll be, I think, surprised how open people are and how willing and ready they are to talk about that once you're able to break past that initial barrier. It's always hard at first. I agree. Starting that conversation is the hardest, but once you kind of break the seal, as it were, it just keeps on flowing because you realize how much you have pent up in you that you've been waiting to get out. So, our action step this week is I really want you to reflect on your money story that you've inherited from your parents and your family. And I want you to ask yourself the question is, are these money stories, are they still serving me? Are they helping me advance to the person that I want to be? And if they are not, we need to start to rewrite that money mindset, rewrite the story in your brain. Because remember, you're just telling yourself a story. And you have the choice to choose to tell yourself a different story.
100%. 101%. I love that. I love that. That's
So
what I
let's
love about
give,
life. You can
I
choose
know.
which stories you give value to. You can choose where your power goes. And I love that. Hopefully, you're dedicating your energy, your power, your life towards living a beautiful life that you've envisioned and you've created. I'm thinking we do a little recap, Jess, of
Yeah. So let's go ahead and we'll recap the 5 money taboos that need to die, or generational money taboos that need to just die. And number 1 was debt is always bad. Number 2 is it's never okay to cut off your kids. Number 3 is leave your kids an inheritance, even at your own expense. Number 4 was couples should always combine their finances. And number 5 is you need to follow the same financial goals as your parents. And we also added a bonus one that we need to encourage everyone, ourselves, our friends, our family, to start having open conversations about money and how that money impacts their lives. And I speak from personal experience again that once you do that, you'd be surprised how many people are willing and desire to have that conversation with somebody. Just everyone's afraid to be the first one to start it.
100%. 100%. With that being said, guys, if you found value today, we would appreciate it if you haven't already subscribed or are following the channel. We would appreciate it if you did that. And if you would give us a like if you're watching on YouTube, or rate us a 5-star if you're watching on Spotify or wherever you happen to be watching. Please, please, please. I'm speaking from experience. Going on this financial journey is scary. It's so scary. It's scary going alone. I highly encourage you to bring a friend along. Bring a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a mother, a father, a friend, an enemy. Any of those will apply. Because when you go together, you can go further. And that's what we want. We want you to go further and further and further on this financial journey. So if you wouldn't mind sharing this podcast with someone who you believe deserves a better financial future, we would really appreciate that. With that being said, Chris, any final thoughts?
No, I look forward to seeing the viewer at 5 Friday Feedback, where we're going to recap this and keep on talking about some other stuff.
Beautiful. Till then, guys, later.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.